Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar about caring for your loved one with LEMS. We're going to be talking about the role of being a caregiver for someone with LEMS, how being a caregiver may change over time, and tips to balance taking care of yourself and taking care of your loved one. We're excited to have you join us today. I'm Carrie Ostrea, Senior Manager of Patient Advocacy at Catalyst Pharmaceuticals. I've also been the caregiver of a young child diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic condition, so this is definitely an area that I'm passionate about, having firsthand experience about managing life when caring for a medically complex family member. I'll be walking you through the webinar today. Later, we'll be joined by Mark, a caregiver of an individual living with LEMS, who will share his experiences with us. So let's talk about what LEMS is. LEMS is a rare neuromuscular autoimmune disorder. The main symptom of LEMS is muscle weakness, especially in the legs and hips. And because of this, there can be many activities that are difficult for your loved one to do. This muscle weakness can occur anywhere throughout the body and can make it difficult for individuals with LEMS to do daily activities, such as the ones listed here. It is important to know that the muscle weakness individuals with LEMS experience may fluctuate day to day. This means that your loved one may be able to perform a task today, but they may need your help with it tomorrow. As I mentioned, we're here today to talk about caring for a loved one with LEMS and the variety of experiences that come from being a caregiver. So now, let's dive into some ways to support your loved one living with LEMS. So what does it mean being a caregiver? Being a caregiver means that you assist someone in their daily life, often by helping them with certain activities that they may have trouble doing on their own. Every caregiver's role looks different and varies on how much support their loved one needs. Some caregivers may assist their loved ones frequently and across many different activities, whereas others may only need their loved one's assistance with a few more difficult activities. So, who can be a caregiver? A caregiver can be a parent, spouse, partner, an adult child, even a friend or extended family member, anyone who provides care to their loved ones. Now, every caregiver's experience is different, along with the tasks that they may need help their loved one with. Some of the most common areas that caregivers may need help with are managing their loved one's treatment regimen and any changes, assisting with meal preparation and exercise, providing emotional support, discussing mental health with them, running errands, and attending doctor's visits. And support can be given in many different ways. It's important to find out exactly what works for you and your loved one in your daily life. For example, helping your loved one maintain a healthy diet can look different for every caregiver. This may be preparing meals, or it may be something more interactive, like going to the farmer's market together or creating the weekly shopping list together. And managing mental health can also be a part of caregiving. Anxiety and depression are common with people who have chronic conditions like LEMS. Regular sleep, exercise if possible, and a healthy diet may reduce your loved one's symptoms of anxiety and depression. You can also talk with your loved ones on how they're feeling and brainstorm different mindfulness techniques and other activities that may help how they're feeling. Now, while it's important to be a caregiver to your loved one, you are first and foremost a caregiver to yourself. And now we've spoken a lot about how to care for your loved one with LEMS. Now let's talk about self-care, which is one of the more challenging aspects of being a caregiver. Taking on extra responsibilities or tasks as a caregiver can be overwhelming and increase stress. Self-care is crucial for caregivers in order to stay balanced, happy, and healthy. It is also easier to take care of others when you take care of yourself. While self-care looks different for everyone, some ideas of where to start are eating consistent and nutritious meals, getting enough sleep consistently, seeing and relying on friends and family, taking time to yourself to relax, spending time doing a hobby that you enjoy, and then seeking support from government or nonprofit sources. A great first step is blocking off some amount of time for yourself, whatever is doable for you. You can then use this dedicated time put aside as me time. You may choose to have a cup of tea with a friend, spend time doing a hobby, or just relax with a good book. Putting aside even a small amount of time regularly can help you get into the habit of dedicating intentional time to yourself and your needs outside caregiving. Now, balancing caregiving responsibilities with daily life can be difficult. It is important to talk with the person you are caring for and others to figure out a daily living schedule that works for you. These conversations may be difficult, but they are worth having for both you and your loved one. Things you can try to include working with your job to adjust your work schedule or moving personal activities to days or times that are more convenient. All aspects of your life, including being a caregiver, can be seen as pieces of a puzzle. It can take time to find out how your puzzle or your daily schedule fits together. And remember, you are only one person and you are doing a lot for your loved one and yourself. There is a wide variety of mental health resources available to help support you. Some of these may be provided by the federal government, some by your state's government, and some by a community level. We will provide some different mental health resources to you as part of this webinar. We recognize that people have different challenges they might need help with. And here are some programs for people who need financial support, organizations with educational information about caregiving, and resources for those people struggling with mental health challenges. Well, I am thrilled to introduce Mark, who is a caregiver to his partner, Jamie, who is living with LEMS. So thank you for joining us today, Mark. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yeah, sure. So Jamie and I met in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a long time ago, back in 1988. We had our first date December the 6th, and we just celebrated the 35th anniversary of our first date, which is crazy. I had a great
Congratulations.
time. Thank you. Obviously, we're married. We'll be married 35 years this coming year. We have three daughters. Raised them in the house of estrogen, all girls there. They're 31, 28, and 26. They've all been married. I have two dreamy grandbabies in another state too far away. We served in ministry 32 years, Southern California, different states. I was chief of staff at a large church out there. I've been a worship leader. Jamie was a children's pastor. Then in 2010, cancer hit her mother-in-law. So that was actually one of our first caregiving experiences where we left our ministry careers and moved to Georgia to take care of her. After that, as you know, one of our daughters developed anorexia, and that was a 6-year caregiving journey. And that brings us to LEMS. So it's been a great journey. We're happy together. I'm also mentor. I might talk about this later. I mentor young men all over the world for the last 40 years through my own organization. I've been an analyst and a coach for a well-known company. And of course, my number one job is caregiver, for sure. Yeah.
And it sounds like you've had a lot of different types of caregiving experiences over your lifetime here.
Yeah, I have, and unexpected. I mean, to be real, when Jamie said, I want to move to Georgia and care for my mom, I understood the emotions and heart of it, but I did not want to leave our happiness in Missouri where we were, that we loved the church that we worked for, but I knew she was right. And honestly, that was an unexpected caregiving experience, but I can't tell you how thankful I am that I had it. Not only for her to care for her mom, and of course I helped, but it prepared us for this, to be
Yes.
honest.
Can you share with us what that diagnostic journey was for Jamie and what it was like from your perspective?
Yeah, so we first, saw the symptoms clear back in 2014 and 15, and she just kept saying, well, we're getting older, we're in our 50s now, it's just aging. But some of the symptoms started to get worse. Stairs were getting tough. Her muscles were burning. I just noticed more and more her muscles jerking, lack of control in her limbs, and sometimes her speech was slurred. So we're like, oh man, something really isn't right here. So we started seeing a neurologist. The first diagnosis, talking about diagnostics, was Parkinson's. And of course, there were a lot of tears. That's terminal. And she kind of shut down. She was overwhelmed through that. We even separated for a while because of it. She just needed some space. Nothing wrong with our marriage, but she's super independent, Carrie. And she's like, if this is what I have, I can't face this. My mother died. Our daughter nearly died. So I gave her space. The good part about it was we got a second opinion. I'm glad we did, because when we ran the right tests, we had an EMG, electromyography. Of course, I'm not a doctor here, so I don't want to speak on everything that we did. But those diagnostics really brought to light that, hey, this isn't Parkinson's, it's Lambert-Eaton's myasthenic syndrome. And we're like, what's that?
Right.
So of course it's ultra rare. But it was overwhelming. I mean, it was scary, but we stuck together, and it took a couple of years to get to the bottom of what it really was. I know that's a common experience that people have from what I've heard at different meetings that we've been to, but I'm grateful for the neurologist that we had that kind of brought us through that and is still our neurologist today.
Oh, that's
Great.
wonderful.
Yeah. Mhm.
You get that kind of support. Once Jamie received the LEMS diagnosis, what was your initial reaction and how did you approach, accepting this and learning more about it?
Well, there's always fear, Carrie, with any diagnosis that a diagnosis that is life-changing. There's always fear. I'm a researcher, and so is Jamie. So of course you can't believe everything you read on the internet, said Abraham Lincoln. But we did our research, and yeah, there was a lot of fear. I think some sadness that I had, Carrie, in realizing, wow, we're not going to be able to do the things that we thought we would do in our 50s and 60s and 70s. She's been an athlete. She could whip me on the basketball court better than anybody. Like, those are things that she can't do now and even couldn't do at the time of diagnosis. So, initial reaction, some sadness, but honestly, there was also relief too. I know that seems like a paradox, but relief in knowing, okay, it's not Parkinson's or it's not some other disease. We don't really know what this is, but we're going to figure it out. So it was bittersweet, and maybe that's a better way to put it. A lot of mixed
Yeah.
feelings.
Well, that makes sense because when you get a diagnosis, especially in the ultra rare, condition, knowing gives you a lot of power to be able to look for something
It
to eventually
does.
understand.
It
So having a correct diagnosis, I could see, really kind of gives you a little bit more empowerment.
it really did empower us, and that's a great word for it. And we feel empowered now after 5 years of being involved with LEMS.
Yeah. So walk us through what a typical day in your life looks like as Jamie's caregiver.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that she's super independent.
Yeah.
So a typical day is I kind of let her get her own day going. I don't want to interfere with her rhythm. She lived 28 years before I came along, so I let her get started. But one thing that I do is try to get a feel for, where is she today? You mentioned this earlier in the program. Some days she could take on the world. The next day she can barely get out of bed. You never know with
Yeah.
LEMS. So I try to get a feel without being too invasive. Where is her mental health today? Where is her emotional health? Looking in her eyes after 35 years, I can see where she's at. So a typical day is letting her get started. And then at some point, I will ask open-ended questions. Hey, would you like to have help with bathing today? Would you like to have help with your laundry? Usually the answers are no, because she likes doing those things. But
Right.
really, I think the best way to answer this question is letting her lead, especially if your partner, the person you care for, is independent. You don't want to take that away. You want to preserve that dignity. And it's important to foster and to honor that independence of the person that you care for. It's a dance, getting involved and taking over, and then letting them lead too. But the biggest thing I'll say, is what way can I help you? So open-ended questions, not do you need help, because the
Well,
answer to that would be no, I got this.
right.
I'm a
And
middle child from Oklahoma. Open-ended questions.
so you've been in
Eh,
this journey for 5 years with
Yep.
her. Have
Hmm.
you seen her willingness to accept help? I mean, coming from, like let's look at the first year of that experience, trying to be the one to help her and evaluate her day to where you are now. What kind of changes have you seen within her and within you, how you guys manage that?
Oh my goodness, a lot. Because at the beginning, she would push back, and not on purpose, not in a negative way, but again,
Right.
probably one of the most independent people that you could meet. and it's better now. And part of that is my approach, and I'm not bragging that I've been perfect at it because I've had my days when I literally wanted to pull my hair out and maybe hers too. But
Right.
my approach matters, like my posture and my attitude towards her.
Yeah.
So when she would push back, then I would try to give her space because she's the one that has to realize, hey, I can't do this by myself. I can't make her believe that. And it's really honestly her own realization, Carrie, of, yeah, I do need some help. So I better, what's the right word? I'm not humble yourself, but I better open myself to the
Yeah.
help that I need. And not just from my caregiver, but from my children. I mean, she's been the one taking care of them, and now they show up to help her. That's really, really different, right? I have seen a change, and it's a process. It's not something that happened even in the first year. I think the second or third year was probably the most difficult because it really starts to sit in with you like, wow, we're going to be doing this till our last breath,
Right.
you
Well,
know?
it's, as your marriage grows, as you guys still grow in your relationship, this is a new twist on what you thought your life was already.
Yeah, it is. And I think that we're resilient. Again, I mean that in a humble way. If you read our story, it's out there online. We've been through a lot of things, but so is everyone else. We're also not victims. So we don't wake up every day ruminating, thinking, oh, I wish this was different. I mean, once in a while, but like you can't live like that. You have to
Right.
say, this is where we're at. And how can we laugh some and smile some and, like we were talking about earlier, light some candles and some lighting, and let's just work through this together. And then who can we help? If we're going to go through this with some smiles and laughter, hey, I'm sure there's some other people that we could help um, along the way.
Well, just by you being
Right.
here and sharing this is going to be helping a lot of
Yeah.
people. So, how has being her caregiver changed your relationship? And what adjustments have you had to make besides the morning? Let me subtly evaluate to see what I can be of help with.
Yeah. Well, definitely, there's some things that we can't do, and we talked about that. I mentioned she was an athlete. We
Right.
liked walking the beach since we live here in Florida, and now if we go to the beach, we take a walker. So it's a lot different using a walker on the beach. We find other ways to connect. I mean, there's certain shows that she likes that I might not necessarily care about. We're not big TV people, but I learned raising daughters that sometimes you have to play with toys and watch shows that aren't that masculine for the sake of love.
Yeah.
And I it has changed our relationship, but if I were to answer that question, I would say for the better. Um, because after it kind of set in, again, we were like, well, if this is our direction, how can we make this work? We did have our time of being separated, and I mentioned that it's not something we're ashamed of. She just had to have space, Carrie, to figure this out. I
Yeah.
could not do that for her. You can't force the person you care for to feel a certain way or think a certain way. That's not our job. She had to figure that out. But in terms of changing, yeah, it has for sure, but for the better, honestly. I feel like LEMS, believe it or not, has brought us even closer, and we were really close before this.
And you brought back a couple of times this separation, and I think that's a not as unique of a situation as people think it is, but it is really scary for other families who have a
Yeah.
spouse that or a parent or a child that needs that break. If you could share with another family who's just getting into this LEMS journey, if one person does need a break, what would you want to tell them to kind of give them a little more perspective?
Well, I mean, I could have said no, but then we wouldn't be together today, Carrie. Had I stuck my heels in the ground, we're not separating. She even used the word divorce once, which she doesn't remember, and says that she didn't, but she did. So, man, I was scared. We had
Oh,
been married, 28 years by then and happy. I was literally crying. Yeah, I'll say it. I would cry and in my car
beautiful.
loud. But to answer your question, one day I finally said, well, if this is what you need, it's not what I want, but I want you to make it. Because she said, Carrie, her words were, I'm at the bottom of the pool and I'm a point zero 0.01. She said this, I'm a point zero 0.01 on a scale of 1 to 10. I have nothing to give you.
Oh, wow. That's got to be hard to hear.
It was. I cried. I journal a lot. I've journaled 47 years. That's one of the ways I've coped. And when I look back at those, which I was this week because I'm
Yeah.
scanning them for posterity, for my descendants, I was like, man, that was a really, no, I can't use that word. That was a really bad time. That was a really crappy time for
Right.
us. And to answer your question, it hurt. But I feel like you have to say yes and say, well, if this is what you need, and it might not even be completely separating like we did. We didn't talk for 3 months, Carrie. That's not Mark and Jamie. That
Yeah.
was so hard. I literally cried every day
I can see.
because
I can
because
see
of the
why.
depth of love that I have for her and her love for me. But I'll say it again, if I hadn't said, okay, I give you space, and she went and lived with one of our daughters, and I stayed with friends for that 9 month period. If I had not done that, we wouldn't be together today. And who would care for her? Who would journey with her? And who would journey with me? So, to answer your question for families who, yeah, this does happen, and I've heard a couple other families, then do what you have to do. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's not 9 months like us. Give them
Right.
the space they need, or give them a different room in the house or some kind of space, because that person that you're caring for, I said this earlier, they have to figure it out for themselves. You can
They
support, you can
do.
love, you can listen to understand, but you can't do it for them. So I think you have to do it, as bad as it hurts, whatever
It
it
does
takes.
hurt. But I also feel you're getting the diagnosis at the same time as her caregiver. She may be living with it, but it is impacting you just as much, just
Oh,
physically.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I'm not saying that break apart was totally for her, because I grew a lot too. I mean, I determined, well, if we're going to be apart, then I need to work through some of my own pain too. I also lost a mother-in-law. I nearly lost a daughter twice who was on feeding tubes for months, at a time. I have some pain too. And us men, and generally speaking, not to genderize it, but we kind of compartmentalize and put it in a cabinet and try to hide it. So
Right.
yes, you're right. It hurt me too, and I had to also have my space to figure it out.
Well, it worked because that space brought you guys back together, and you guys it sounds just incredibly strong in your understanding on how to deal with this LEMS journey. But how do you deal with the emotional ups and downs that come with caring for someone with a chronic illness?
Well, I mean, it is like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
One day can be smooth, and you're like, oh, we got this, and then the next day it just feels like everything's breaking loose. And honestly, ups and downs, that is a true and lasting element of being a caregiver. There's ups and downs. They can happen daily or weekly. And I think the good part is, though, if you're really connected with the person that you're caring for, you will and you should feel their feelings. That's part of it. You want to feel it.
Mhm.
And it does affect you, and it should affect you. If not, you're not really connected with them. You're just showing up to help make coffee. It's not about that.
Right.
I think feeling their ups and downs, Carrie, and experiencing the ups and downs with them will actually help you navigate together, and it's brought us closer. And then you have to process those ups and downs.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll sit and talk here in the living room, and the timing has to be right, right? It's not when everybody's hot under
Right.
the collar, let's talk right now. Mm-mm. I mean, me as the caregiver, I'll say, well, let's wait a couple days. And then the funny thing is, you realize, oh, that wasn't a big deal. It's not even worth talking about. Will it matter next week or next month? No.
Right.
But if there is something to talk about, it's all about how you do it. It's not me versus you. It's us. And sitting at a 45-degree angle together, which we often do, holding hands if you're touching, have some kind of touch, so that we're telling each other we're in this together. And then having non-judgmental, open-ended conversations. It's not really about who's right, Carrie. It's what can we do that we didn't do that great in this situation on this day? And it's usually me. I'm usually the one that's like, oh wow, I really screwed up. I love you. Thank you. It's rarely her, but maybe
Yeah.
once in a while. But it's not about who's right. It's about what is right for
You've got to
them.
work through it. Yeah.
Yes.
Ways to work through it. Absolutely.
And then I want to say this. She's normally upbeat, even in the midst of this disease, and positive. I'm a creative musician. We can be melancholy at the drop of a hat. And so, what I'm about to say, I feel like is one of the most important things about being a caregiver. And you touched on this. Have a network. It's not easy, but have someone else, or have someone else's, more than one person,
Right.
to talk to. You can't see it, but on this credenza beside me, I have pictures of the young men I've journeyed with, Carrie, for some of them 40 years now. I can't believe how old they're getting. I have them here
Been an
because,
incredible mentor to a lot
oh,
of you men.
oh, thank you. Thank you. I have them here because it reminds me that they are my network. My best friends are 25 and 30 years, 35 years younger than me. And instead of dumping my creative firstborn, you know, emotions on her, I'll call one of them. Do you really do that, Mark? As someone who's 30? Oh, yeah, because they have great insights that I don't have at 60. So I'm always learning from them. You must have a network that's healthy, uh, more than one person. And I'm saying that because you can, for lack of a better word, dump, vent
Yeah.
those emotions with them so that they don't weigh your partner down because they have enough weight. Just waking up every day and getting through LEMS
Yeah.
is enough. So I'm not
It,
saying I'm perfect at
it,
it,
no, but it
but
sounds
I
like
try.
you found ways to
Yeah.
work through those additional challenges that get put on
Hmm.
caregivers. There
Yeah.
is that stress that, and I don't want to use the word burden because that's really not the right word, but caregiving does put on a lot of stress that outside people may not see, and being able to relieve some of that stress by having conversations, by finding support, finding community, I think is
Yeah.
hugely important, but hard to do when you're in the midst of all the
It
challenges.
is. And finding healthy people. So this is not something that you can even just talk about with everybody in your family. I
Right.
mean, not everyone will understand. And then I know this is an overused word, but is this person toxic or healthy that I'm going to vent on, that I'm going to share with?
Right.
And can they handle what I'm about to say? That's why I have more than one person. I mean, I generally talk, if you looked at my phone, text or talk to 7 to 10 of my friends, younger friends, every day. So it's not always about LEMS, but having their support and love, and they love Jamie too. She's their second mom,
Yeah,
most of them or some of them.
that's wonderful.
That really matters, is you having some people, or at least one, that you can talk to and not dump all of your emotions on adding to the weight of your partner.
No, that makes perfect sense. And that kind of brings me to another area of conversation I'd love to have with you is talking about, the wider support community of LEMS
Hmm.
caregivers. You've been able to meet other families
Yeah.
affected by LEMS during this journey.
Of course, there are social media groups on Facebook. I wouldn't comment on all those. Be sure that you're, finding again the right information that's healthy and proper and positive. Um, but connecting with other LEMS patients, other caregivers has been a challenge. It's not easy. Some people may not be where you are. They might not be ready to share their feelings. Some people have shame for their diseases, unfortunately, but connecting is important. And it's something that we still strive to do. I'm super grateful for the networks that Jamie and I have, for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. It does definitely make a difference. And I think, being part of an ultra rare disease community, it's a learning experience for the entire community to grow together.
Yeah.
And, where
Yeah.
I've seen it 5 years ago, even before, to where it is now, it's a massive, difference, which is in a very positive way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for us I guess it's been almost 5 years for us too, the changes that we've seen and the knowledge base growing, what we can read now online that's helpful and healthy, what
Yeah,
we've learned from Catalyst and Snow and other organizations has really helped us. And we've been able to educate our family, the daughters that I mentioned. I actually had them here for a procedure that we did to help Jamie so they could be present and watch and just opening up those doors of communication with
right.
people that we're close to. Our neighbors know about the LEMS journey, you know, to a point. They see her with her chair, power chair, they see her with her walker. Those community connections, man, they get you through.
I
They do.
definitely
I mean,
do.
it's how some of us got through the pandemic, right? So it's no different now. I mean, this is an
Bringing back
alt.
flashbacks there, but yeah.
Oh yeah, trauma, trauma
Yeah.
here.
Uh,
Um,
y- but so, being a caregiver, what you share a lot, it sounds like, and you have a lot of open, and sharing people in your network. But what do you wish that people outside of your network, people who just know of you, know, not as intimately about your daily experience as Jamie's caregiver?
yeah. What I wish they knew the most is how lonely it can be,
Yeah.
how isolating it can be. Because you look at her when we go out, she still looks relatively young. It's not like we're 90, nothing wrong with that, but we still get around and they're like,
Right.
why does she have that walker? What are they doing parking in the handicap spot? I saw her get out of that. You can't worry about any of that stuff. I wish that people knew how lonely you can feel and how isolating it can be to have an ultra rare disease and then to care for that person. Again, I'm going to say this: we're not victims. We're not ashamed of this disease. Don't ever let your loved one feel that shame. Push it away. So what if they use a walker or a wheelchair or a power chair, or if something happens to them in public or you park in the handicap spot, do it. It's none of their business. I kind of hate saying it that way, but a little bit of my firstborn here, Papa Bear, like, hey, it's none of your business. I
No,
wish
it makes
people
perfect
knew,
sense.
though, that it can be isolating and that it can be lonely if you let
Yeah.
it be.
Well, one last question, because I think you bring a lot of, hope and inspiration to a lot of people who may be in similar situations as a caregiver, whether it's someone with LEMS or another condition. What is the most inspiring part of this caregiving experience that you want others to know about?
The most inspiring part,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Hearing her say things like, I couldn't do this without you, or thank you for your love and care. Thank you for being patient with me. She says that a lot. And Jamie is not one to just say whatever. She's relatively reserved. When she says something, you should listen because it's important. So whenever she expresses those feelings, it is uplifting and inspiring to me to know that I have the honor of helping her and communicating with her based on her needs and her love languages. That's inspiring to me. Secondly, to be able to have the honor of sharing it and empowering other patients and other caregivers. I mean, my biggest advice in one sentence would be to take care of you. And I think you said this at the beginning,
Yeah.
because honestly, if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of them. You might think you are, but you're not.
And I think
So
that's the biggest challenge for people to understand and live
yeah,
when it
yeah,
comes to caregiving.
and you said this earlier, but that might look different for every caregiver. So I journal,
Yeah.
I walk. Sometimes I have tendonitis, so I bike instead. I get my heart rate up. I enjoy nature. I call friends. Believe it or not, I'll go organize a closet or pull everything out from under the sink and reorganize it, clean something, read, listen to music. I'm a keyboard player, play keys. And you said this earlier, as a caregiver, man, eat healthy, rest. When they're taking a nap, take a nap if you can. There's no shame in that. If you don't take care of you, you can't take care of them.
I totally agree. Well, is there anything before we wrap up today that you would like to say before we end this presentation, this conversation?
No, I probably said enough. They'll probably have to edit a whole bunch out of this.
Well,
It's always honor and joy to see you and talk to you,
you too. I
and
always enjoy our
be
conversations.
a part of this journey together. And for Jamie and I to share our stories is truly an honor. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. So I want to thank our guest speaker, Mark, for sharing his experiences with us today. If you would like more information related to this webinar, you can follow Catalyst on social media using @BeLemsAware or email us at advocacy@catalystpharma.com.